The process leading up to Panama's independence was not one of grandiose ideology or nationalism, but one of pragmatic opposition to a dysfunctional political system which disadvantaged the Panamanian population. Due to policies enacted by lawmakers in the Colombian capital of Bogota over the prior half-century, Panamanians of all classes had an increased sentiment that they were not being considered economically, socially, or religiously. Years of partisanship and flawed rule originating from distant legislative bodies, as well as outright civil conflict, had bred discontent towards the Colombian Union since the 1850s. Yet, in its early years, much of this acted simply as a protest movement, with relatively few devoted separatists, since transoceanic transport upheld a decent economy. Naturally, the more a population is profiting from certain conditions, the less likely they are to revolt, as they could consequently spoil said conditions. However, as infighting within Colombia began to favor paramilitaries over political debate, the Colombian Republic turned inward to bolster stability, a period during which the Panama Canal's construction ground to a halt, and independence became an increasingly plausible idea. Furthermore, as relatively small players on the world stage, both Colombia and Panama were subject to much international influence from great powers such as the United States and the United Kingdom. Eventually, foreign intervention would contribute directly to Panamanian independence. Yet, in the decades leading up to independence, the history of Panama is very much composed of an international timeline and a domestic timeline. Prior to engaging with independence condition timelines, it is critical to first understand how Panama became part of Colombia and what made the region so desirable. The region became independent of the Spanish Empire in 1821 and joined the newly founded nation of Gran Colombia during the Republic's official reorganization process. Panama was merged with the largest region of Colombia under the Congress of Cucuta in 1821. However, the Bolivarian Republic of Gran Colombia was soon dissolved in 1830, splitting into the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the Republic of Ecuador, and the Republic of New Granada, which was formed by Colombia and Panama. Under this new system, the Panamanians found themselves in an advantageous negotiating position to gain increased autonomy and representation in the central government, since the Colombian government was attempting to retain any sort of national unity, a desperation which could be adequately leveraged. The region of Panama was permitted significant leeway on autonomously forming regional economic, social, and religious policy. This segment of Panama's history, under the context of amicable relations with legislators in Bogota, acts as a comparison point for worsening conditions for Panama in later decades. For changes in the Colombian government in the decades leading up to Panama's independence would deviate significantly from the region's autonomously set policies, resulting in growing discontent among Panamanians. Furthermore, understanding prior Panamanian and Colombian history also aids in dispelling grandiose national rhetoric disguised as historical assertion, which claims that Panamanians were bolstered by a nationalistic and patriotic sentiment more than any other factor. Yet, the above statement could not be further from the truth, for at that time there was no concrete Panamanian racial or national identity. Prior to its independence, Panama was part of the Viceroyalty of New Granada alongside Colombia. Even its independence from the Spanish Empire was followed by unification with Colombia to form the Department of Cundinamarca in Gran Colombia, and participation within the Republic of New Granada. As a result of the colonial, Bolivarian, and autonomous Republican period, economic immigration to Panama had surged over the past century, especially due to opportunities associated with transoceanic transport. As a result of this mass immigration towards the region, the population was quite racially diverse, with the population identifying themselves as mestizo, mulatto, Caucasian, Colombian, etc., rather than Panamanian. As such, racial nationalism was not a viable option on which to base Panamanian independence from Colombia, and was not a critical condition in the origins of independence. Yet, various key components of Panamanian independence did arise from the positive economic conditions themselves. The first nation to ponder the creation of a transoceanic canal through Panama was the Spanish Empire, as a law had been passed by national parliament in 1814 to commence construction of a Panamanian canal. But this plan was soon dismissed due to uprisings in various Spanish-American colonies, including in the Viceroyalty of New Granada, later forming Gran Colombia. During the Spanish Empire's decline, various great powers such as the United States and the United Kingdom saw great opportunity in constructing their own transoceanic canals through Central America. The first nation to act on this opportunity was the United States, which signed the Marino-Bidlack Treaty on December 12, 1846, with the government of the Republic of New Granada. This document, once ratified, granted the United States rights to transportation across the Panamanian Isthmus upon the promise of neutrality towards the region of Panama and assurance of New Granada's sovereignty. As such, trips from the Atlantic to Pacific were drastically shortened from approximately 4 weeks going around the Strait of Hormuz down by Argentina to 2 weeks, fostering economic growth as costs associated with transporting cargo were halved, and permitting increased social convenience for American travelers. This treaty became especially important to the United States upon the discovery of Californian gold in 1848 and the ensuing gold rush from 1848 to 1855. The United States was responsible for the construction of the Trans-Isthmian Railroad, after which the first train ran across it January 28, 1855. These years marked a critical debut for American economic and social dependence on transoceanic travel through Panama and aids in explaining American economic incentive for construction of the Panama Canal. Although the United States was not the only great power that desired influence over a transoceanic passage, as the United Kingdom was looking for much the same thing. By 1848, the British had begun to position themselves optimally for the construction of an alternate canal passing through the independent nation of Nicaragua. As such, the United States opted for compromise so that the British would not take advantage of their opportunity, and the two nations signed the Clayton-Bulwark Treaty of 1850. The treaty significantly limited British expansion in Central America. However, it also barred the United States from constructing and/or administering any sort of canal and surrounding territory. Due to this international treaty, the United States was restricted from purchasing land from the Republic of New Granada for any such purpose as stated above, even when in favorable conditions with the administration in Bogota. Therefore, the economically dependent Panamanian population would have to rely on the Colombian government either constructing the canal themselves or outsourcing the project to a foreign firm. However, the Colombian government opted to do neither in the 1850s or 1860s, upsetting various regional and international stakeholders as a result. The reason for this inability to construct was internal conflict, which had been growing more intense within the Republic of New Granada since the 1840s, known as the Conservative Liberal Struggle. A transition of power had occurred in 1849 from outgoing conservative president General Tomás Cipriano de Mosquera to radical liberal president General José Hilario López. Whilst Cipriano established a government monopoly on the trade of tobacco and increased international trade, López came with the agenda of proletariat-centered social upheaval for the Colombian population, through the abolition of slavery, dissolution of several government monopolies, etc. This radical shift led to significant backlash from various conservative factions around Colombia, who rose up in arms against the central government, including in Panama. This conflict eventually dragged out into the Epoch of Civil Wars, during which paramilitaries hired by conservative and liberal elites clashed, as well as the Colombian military, which soon became involved in quelling uprisings around the nation. Yet, the Colombian military was extremely weak and spread thin across the entire nation. As such, public order could not be maintained in any given region, especially in Panama. The epoch is approximated to have spanned 240 months, or around 20 years from the 1850s onwards, of which 51 months, about 4.25 years, were spent combating civil conflicts provoked by insurgent paramilitaries and guerrilla operations. As is justified to assume, the central government of Colombia was not operating at optimal efficiency while having to quell so many open rebellions. Thus, the issue of the Panama Canal's construction dragged on for approximately 30 years, during which Panama was suffering from economic stagnation and growing unrest. The war generated through this civil unrest did not directly promote Panamanian independence from Colombia. However, it catalyzed local dissatisfaction with the central government, concerning itself more so with partisan conflicts which did not concern the people of Panama as much as developing economic infrastructure such as the canal. Furthermore, the drastic switch from a conservative administration to radical liberal administration brought about a change in democratic institutions themselves. In 1858, the regionalist system of government founded in the Republic of New Granada was overturned by Federalist liberal legislators in Bogotá, who created a short-lived Grenadine Confederation. Yet, the Confederation was utterly dysfunctional, and another transformation in government was necessary in order to cement Federalist power. This was achieved through the 1863 establishment of the United States of Colombia, an even more staunchly Federalist central government. This latest system severely limited Panamanian authority, under which the region had experienced significant economic and social prosperity. A form of beneficial neglect is what Panama had prospered under. It had been instead exchanged for increased federal participation in local governance. Thus, the previously streamlined system for local issues was now under the control of the lethargic national government, which meant that the time lag in tackling problematic economic issues increased drastically. However, radical changes came not only to the realm of economics, but to that of religion in the region. Another crucial aspect of the Federalist liberal agenda was to remove the church influence within the government, as to further assert the state's control on the nation. Such efforts took special aim at the influential Roman Catholic lobby and limiting their sway on the government. This dismayed the Panamanian population, of whom a vast majority were Roman Catholic, and influenced the church's assertions. As such, in presenting a secularist agenda, the Colombian liberal administration had brought religion into the fray, a controversial topic which had incited a previous attempt at independence on the isthmus in November 1840, during which it had taken the name Free State of the Isthmus in March 1841. Thus, this factor could be capable of pushing the isthmus on the path towards independence once again. Although, one must concede that in early years the concept of Panamanian independence was not highly structured or an all-encompassing movement. The isthmus had its brushes with separatism, including 5 attempts at secession. However, these attempts neither had the popular support nor financial or material means to pose a serious threat to the central government. Furthermore, when Colombia was still in a positive relationship with the United States, the Americans intervened 13 times on Colombia's request and their desire to protect strategic interests associated with transoceanic transport. One such rebellion, effectively prevented by the United States, commenced on April 15th, 1856, and is colloquially known as the Watermelon War, a large riot resulting in 17 unalivings, which ensued after a drunken American tourist unalived a local bystander during a conflict with a fruit vendor selling watermelon slices. This event was largely considered to have been the result of rising tensions between the local Panamanian population and upper-class Americans and Colombians, due to a stagnant economic situation and worsening conditions. Although this conflict had resulted in the new Grenadine government allowing the United States the right to establish military bases surrounding the railroads and take complete control legally of the railroad, increasing significantly American economic benefit from the Panamanian transport sector and investment in later success of the Panama Canal. Yet, with the nation already engulfed in turmoil due to the conservative-liberal struggle, many political and paramilitary organizations were already there, not permitting a serious separatist force to enter the fray. Many crucial military leaders were already engaged in the struggle for power, including the first president of the Republic of Panama and main leader of the Panamanian independence movement, Manuel Amador Guerrero. In 1868, he became the acting president for Panama under a conservative affiliation and took up arms against the liberal president of Colombia soon after being confirmed for office. Yet, this was not due to any separatist leanings, but because he held the conservative partisan forces until he was taken prisoner in the Battle of El Hatillo in 1868. Additionally, after spending a year in prison, it was deemed that Amador Guerrero was no longer a threat to the Colombian government, and he was offered employment by the regional liberal president of Panama as a doctor at the San Tomas Hospital. Amador Guerrero even married into a prestigious family located in Panama City, and became part of the Colombian elite within the region of Panama. The upper classes of Panamanian locals and Colombians within Panama were very much interconnected and doubted the benefits of independence. Especially prominent in their reservations were wealthy conservatives, including Amador Guerrero himself, who still depended on the Colombian government for the construction of critical economic infrastructure. The conditions of decades prior to independence, especially relevant in the case of Amador Guerrero, display that independence only became a viable option once alternative means of infrastructure construction were attained. However, soon after the fall of Manuel Amador Guerrero from leadership of the Panamanian Conservative Party, 2 decades of liberal administration in the national capital of Bogota came to an end in 1880, and the Conservative Party retook power. Whilst many thought that a shift in federal government would bring about a significant change in Panama, it did not live up to popular expectation. It was only in 1886 that the United States of Colombia were dissolved and the Republic of Colombia was formed, with little concrete change to economic, social, or religious policies in the 6 years up to that point. In 1887, the President of Colombia signed a concordat with the Vatican in order to appease the Roman Catholic population, but no concrete return of power occurred for the religious lobby. Thus, discontent still seared among religious groups within Panama, and the Colombian government continued to be seen as an ineffective mess. Additionally, the conservatives attempted to push economic development, yet were unable to as a result of the still heightened opposition from remaining liberal factions. As such, tension between the Panamanians and the central government of Colombia continued to rise. Yet, among a bleak socio-economic scene, there remained one bastion of hope, which a Panamanian independence movement could jeopardize: the active construction of the Panama Canal. As one of the Liberals' last actions in power, they approved the sale of the Panama Canal construction permit to Lucien Napoléon Bonaparte Vis, who then sold it to La Société Internationale du Canal Interocéanique, a French company led by Ferdinand Marie de Lesseps, the creator of the Suez Canal, who the Colombian and American governments expected could successfully complete the project. Yet, by 1898, the firm had reached the point of bankruptcy due to inadequate planning and organizational procedures, disease, difficult terrain, and various other factors depleting funds. As such, the project was sold back to the Colombian government, which was still hoping to keep the initiative outsourced rather than under federal authority. Although the United States, under the Theodore Roosevelt administration, recognized the dire situation in which the Panama Canal project found itself, America soon went back to the negotiating table with the United Kingdom in order to reverse the conditions established by the Clayton Bulwark Treaty of 1850, and both nations ratify the Hay-Pauncefote Treaty of 1901. This compromise stated that the United States could construct the Panama Canal on the condition that it did not forcefully take territory from the Colombian government. Yet, this left the contractual loophole that the United States could take the territory if it belonged to an entity other than the Colombian government, inviting the potential of Panamanian independence at a later point in time. Although, at that moment, propping up Panamanian revolutionaries under the leadership of Guerrero seemed a distant result. Rather, the United States hoped to negotiate with the Colombian government and tentatively had Congress pass the Spooner Act of 1902, approving that the United States government could purchase the canal construction from La Société Internationale du Canal Interocéanique, with the confirmation of the Colombian federal government. Although conflict had started back up again during this period of negotiations across the Republic of Colombia as a result of the conservative-liberal tensions. This tension had culminated into a bloody civil war known as the Thousand Days War, eventually resulting in surrender of liberal insurgent groups. Yet, this significant conflict lasting from October 1899 to November 1902 drew attention away from far-flung Panamanian economic issues, with the Colombian legislative bodies occupied with maintaining the war effort. With construction yet again grinding to a halt, and the Colombian government unwilling to cooperate, both the small faction of Panamanian separatists and the United States saw an opportunity. Yet, negotiations with Colombian diplomats seemed to bear fruits for American diplomats, as both sides sent the High Treaty of 1903 to be ratified by their respective legislative bodies. However, on the Colombian side there was much more discontent with the treaty, as conservative president of Colombia, José Manuel Marroquín, had appointed liberal congressman Juan Bautista Pérez y Soto to negotiations in an attempt to gain bipartisan support for the treaty following the Thousand Days' War. But this had offended the staunch conservative camp, including Panamanian elites like Manuel Amador Guerrero. Wealthy conservatives on the Isthmus would soon begin constructing plans for independence from the Colombian government, with Amador Guerrero, who was economically invested in the project himself, rising quickly through the ranks. When the treaty became bogged down in the Colombian Senate, the Panamanian rebels saw the opportunity associated with the delay in approval and justified independence. The United States soon caught on to this fledgling independence movement and rationalized that supporting Panamanian independence could allow them to take more effective control of Panama Canal's construction. Negotiations would be much more easily leveraged against a smaller and weaker nation rather than Colombia. Thus, the Roosevelt administration accepted offers of negotiation in New York with Amador Guerrero, leading to the final conclusion that this was not some sort of grandiose independence movement based in nationalism, but rather it was based on the economic conditions of the time and changing relationships between the region and its elites, as well as the Colombian government, with a large helping hand from the United States to declare independence and then promote American economic interests, since America, soon after Panama's independence, took total control of the canal. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and liking for more content like it. And also, we have some further readings in the description if you're interested to learn more about the topic. Have a great day. Bye!